Long ago, when the world was young and the rivers still remembered the hands that shaped them, there lived a god whose light was silver and soft. His name was Nanna, and he was the moon. Every night he rose from the eastern edge of the world in his boat made out of glowing reeds and shining wood. And he sailed slowly across the dark sky. But once, Nanna did not only cross the heavens, once he made a journey upon the waters of the earth. He left his city of Ur, where the people watched his face grow full and thin again, where women bled in his rhythm, and where shepherds counted time by his return. Nanna set out on the journey on the great river because he wanted to go to Nippur, the city of his father Enlil, the lord of the wind, the air, and the unseen laws that hold the world together. He did not go empty handed. On his boat, he loaded milk, grain, lamb, and shining stones, offerings, presents for the one who governs fate and order. As Nanna sailed, every city he passed came out to greet him. The river itself seemed to slow for him. The reeds bowed and the fish stilled. For when the moon travels, time itself is moving. At each gate of the river, Nanna stopped and presented his gifts, asking for permission to pass, honoring each power that guarded every threshold between the cities. Finally, he reached Nippur, and he stood in front of Enlil, his father, the great breath that moves storms and seasons, and Nanna spoke firmly. I come not to take, but to align. I come not to demand, but to receive the rhythm that keeps the world from falling. Enlil looked upon his son, and he was pleased. So he blessed Nanna. He gave him authority over the counting of days, over the shaping of months, over the hidden pool that moves the waters and the blood and the tides of thoughts. And when Nanna returned upon the sky above, he did not return the same. From that day forward, the moon was no longer just a light in the sky. He was the keeper of cycles, the one who makes beginnings and endings visible. So, even now, when the moon grows full and when it disappears again, you are watching an ancient journey repeat itself. The journey of a son who learned how to carry time itself. Back.
Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah.
We can't know for sure how old this myth really is, We know that it was written down, carved into clay around 4,600 years ago. But it almost certainly is older than this. It lived in people's mouths before it ever lived in writing. It was passed from parent to child, from priestess to initiate, from the old ones to the young ones, all sitting by the river under the night sky. And of course, it changed. It changed through translations, it changed through retelling, it changed through different cultures that each, when hearing it, were shaping it according to their own language and understanding. So, what you just heard is not a frozen in time original, it's the river itself, flowing through time. But what I want to show you today is that for ancient humans, myth was not a story in the way that we understand stories today. It was not entertainment, and it was definitely not fun fiction. It was not a religion, even though we're talking about gods. It was not a religion in the modern sense. Myth was encoded science, observational, pattern based, tested across multiple generations, and transmitted into a form that even the youngest child could remember. This is how knowledge moved before we had books, before we had formulas, before we had graphs and charts. You didn't hand down knowledge to someone in a table or a lunar cycle. You told them about the moon god, who waxes and wanes, who journeys, who returns, who governs the blood and the waters and the time itself. And now, with that in mind, let's look again at what the story of Nanna is actually saying. Nanna is the moon, not symbolically, not a god of the moon, it's literally the moon. The moon was the first clock humanity ever had. Before hours, before minutes, before calendars, time was not something you chased, was not something you counted. Time was something you watched. You watched the moon grow, you watched the it grow small again, you watched it disappear, you watched it return. And from the very idea of the month is coming from. So when the story says that the people watched his face grow full and thin again, that's not poetry, that's not mysticism, that's measurement. When it says women bled by his rhythm, that's not metaphor, that's biology. The human reproductive cycle is one of the only biological clocks that naturally aligns with a celestial clock that we can observe. So, time back then was not abstract, it lived in the body, which means that from the very beginning, human beings experience time not as numbers on a screen, but as cycles of becoming, ripening, releasing, and renewing again. Now let's look at the river. Nanna just doesn't just move up in the sky, right? He takes a journey on the waters of the earth. Now in Mesopotamia, the rivers were life itself. They flooded, they receded, they brought fertility, they brought destruction. They decided when you could plant or not, where you could harvest or it's too late, they already flooded. They decided your survival. So, a god traveling a river, it's not a travel scene, it's time in motion through life. Now, the boat is a vessel of passage. Birth is a passage. Death is another passage. Initiation is another passage. The seasons are passages. Equinoxes are passages. The moon traveling in a boat tells you that time is not a point fixed, it's a crossing, it's a moving state from one crossing into another. Then he goes to Nippur, to Enlil. Now, Enlil is not a sky daddy, a god like we know today. Enlil is air, wind, pressure, the invisible forces that move. In a more modern understanding, Enlil is the field that governs the systems that we don't see, the climate, the atmosphere, the circulation of air. Now, these patterns were visible, were observable. So when the moon goes to Enlil, what is actually being described is that the small cycle of the month is aligning itself with the larger cycle of the year. That's what Enlil says. I came in alignment. The rhythm of the blood is being aligned with the rhythm of the cosmos. The personal clock is being synced with the planetary clock. This is a system of alignment. This was chronobiology before the word even existed. Now let's look at the gifts. What does Nanna give to Enlil? It gives milk, grain, lambs, and stones. These are not religious sacrifices. These are layers of reality. Milk is infancy, birth, nourishment. Grain is agriculture or stored sunlight, stored time. Lambs are death, mortality, sacrifice, and the fact that life kind of feeds on life. And stones are permanences, their memory, their eternity. They're what outlasts the body. So the moon is bringing all the levels of the earthly existence in resonance with the cosmic rhythm. Then we have the gates. The story tells us that Nanna stops at every gate and he asks for permissions, he offers gifts, and he passes through. These are not some fantasy gates, these are thresholds in time. New moon, full moon, equinoxes, eclipses, standstills. These are points where one state ends and another begins. Even today, we feel and we track them. Endings feel different, beginnings feel different. There is a pause that we feel before a moment like this, before a threshold like this, a sense of thinning, a sense of crossing. Ritual in the ancient world existed to cross these gates correctly. They weren't worship, they were synchronization. And then we have the most important line in the story. For when the moon travels, time itself is moving. This is, in a single sentence, the ancient worldview about this story. Time is not a single line, time is a living rhythm. You don't control it, you can't argue with it. You move it with it or you break. Plant at the wrong time and the crops fail. Mate at the wrong season and your offsprings die. Travel at the wrong time and weather will kill you. So, sacred didn't mean moral, it meant aligned with the rhythm that sustains life. It was never holy, it was just accurate. Then Enlil gives Nanna gifts back, right? He gives him authority over the waters and the tides of thought. This is incredibly precise for that time. The moon actually moves the oceans, the tides, and the moon affects hormonal cycles of humans, melatonin, all of them. The moon affects our sleep and also the thoughts. It affects our dream intensity and our emotional tides. So, when they said the tides of thought, it wasn't superstition, it was the language for what we now call unconscious rhythm and mood cycles. So, when Nana becomes the visible regulator of invisible processes, he makes beginnings and endings visible. He teaches the first scientific law that humans ever understood. Everything moves in cycles. Everything grows, everything peaks, everything declines, everything disappears, and everything returns. And this is why the story says that when the moon grows full and then it disappears, you are watching an ancient journey repeat itself. Because you are, literally. You are watching the same cycle your ancestors watched thousands upon thousands of years ago and predicted and recognized and measured time with the same body, with the same hormones, with the same tides. So, myth was not religion, it was the operation manual. It's how astronomy, biology, psychology, timekeeping, they were all compressed into a form that could be easily transmitted, that could live in the memory. So, myth was not fantasy writing, it was observable data stored in story. And ritual was not a religious practice, it was staying in the rhythm with forces far larger than your individual will. You can't argue with the moon. You can't outthink the seasons. You can't fight with the tides to stop. So, reverence was never about submission, it was intelligence. It was respect for patterns that sustained life. And what we lost in today's world, it's not the belief in gods, it's not the belief in stories, it's the participation in this rhythm. We still have the moon, but we no longer let it teach us. We replaced a living biological time with a mechanical time with numbers on our phone. We replaced with something analytical instead of cycles, schedules instead of seasons, dead units instead of breathing phases. And the result of that is that we feel completely cut off from the world. We feel anxious, out of sync, out of balance, always rushing, never arriving. Because the psyche evolved in a world where time was a living thing, not a line on a screen, not something passing, losing. You can't lose time. So when you listen to this story about Nanna's journey, you're not listening to fantasy, you're listening to a memory of how consciousness once lived inside the cosmos. Not above it, not fighting against it, inside it. And this is what Throwback Thursday is really all about. It's not about nostalgia, it's not about romantic myths and stories. It's about remembering how humans once understood reality. Not because reality itself was somehow mythical, but because those rhythms were not optional. Thank you for watching and don't forget to subscribe.